Good afternoon all, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Well, this afternoon I'm going to be speaking about something that's very close to my heart, that I've been working with local people for over the last couple of years, and that's the opposition to the third runway at Heathrow. Well, we're now in the final stretch before a parliamentary vote which will be going up, which we're hoping will be unwhipped, on whether the proposed third runway goes ahead or not. Now, there are very good reasons why this runway shouldn't go ahead, and unfortunately a lot of the MPs have only seen one side of the story at the moment. That really needs to change if we're to get the result that both our area and our country deserves, which is blocking any attempt at a third runway at Heathrow. Now, why am I saying this when we're hearing all this stuff about new jobs, investment? Well, because it's all a sham, basically. If you look at the figures that have been put forward on jobs, we were told when Heathrow got Terminal 5 that there'd be a massive new jobs. There weren't, they just mechanised it all. And also, where do the profits go? Well, Heathrow pays a very low amount in terms of corporation tax, but in a 5-year period they paid 2.1 billion in dividends to the shareholders. None of those shareholders, by the way, are British companies. The airport is majority owned by the Spanish, the Quebec French, the Qataris, and a couple of other investment funds. Indeed, one of the Qatari owners actually said, when night flights were discussed, that people in this country have too much freedom, and in his country there would be night flights and people would have to get used to it, which I think is unacceptable. The other thing, on the business side of it, we're being told that we need more airport capacity. Well, the reality is we have 6 airports in London with 7 runways, that's including Heathrow. Most of them are nowhere near capacity. Stansted, Luton and London Southend are all run at under 50%, and even Gatwick, which is the world's busiest single runway airport, is only at 81%. Now, the runways at Heathrow are at 98%, and this is why they're saying they need expansion. But they've been telling us that they've been full for years, yet each year they come back with bigger figures, more passengers carried, more freight. So when you drill down into those figures, you find something quite disturbing. In 2016, 2.4 million empty seats flew out of Heathrow Airport, the equivalent of 8,000 flights at 300 passengers per flight. Effectively, what you've got are a load of empty aircraft which are being run as slot blockers by the airlines who've had those slots for the last 30 or 40 years to deny other airlines access. So there's massive capacity there still to be taken up, but the airlines aren't really interested in giving up their slots, and of course it doesn't really matter to the airport because their third largest amount of profit comes from the landing fees, which are among the highest in Europe. So if we do need more airport capacity, where do we put it? The capacity is already there with those 7 runways. It's only Heathrow that are claiming that they're full. What we need is to look at the infrastructure getting to the other airports, because the reality is the hub is London. This isn't Heathrow's idea that we need this massive hub airport is flawed, because hub traffic and business traffic are in decline. It's short and long haul point-to-point flights that are the ones that are actually on the increase, and we've got enough capacity at the other airports. It's just the infrastructure's not great getting to them. It's a little bit like the Kevin Costner film Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. Build the infrastructure, and a lot of those airlines will be looking at it and thinking, hang on, we're paying all these massive landing fees at Heathrow, but we've now got an alternative where we can get our passengers into London, which is where half of them want to go. We can get them into London just as quick. Our landing fees are cheaper. We'll switch. So it spreads the load, and those runways are already there. Plus, we've also got an unused runway sat there at Manston that will take the biggest airliners out there. All that needs is to be reopened, new terminal, couple of new links, so into the Channel rail line into the Channel Tunnel link, boosting the A2 and the M2. All of a sudden you've got an airport there that can get people into the City of London in 40 minutes, and also gives you access to the Channel ports via the Channel Tunnel, which surely in a post-Brexit Britain That's what we should be looking to do. Then you have the financial implications for us as taxpayers. The Davis Commission report said that £5 million would be needed to upgrade the road and rail links around the airport. That of that 5 billion, the airport was saying they'll only put in 1 billion. But that's only half the story, because Davis actually underestimated how much it's going to cost. Transport for London looked at this, because whereas Davis looked at the immediate area around the airport, TfL are looking at it from a wider range of what that's going to do to the transport further out. And they reckon it's somewhere between 15 and 18 billion pounds worth of your money going in to boost the profits of an airport that's owned by overseas agencies that pay the minimum tax they can get away with. So do you want your money going in to boost foreign investors at the expense of the health and the ability to get around of our local environment? Because again, in the local environment, we're going to lose, they're saying a minimum of 800 homes are going to be demolished, compulsory purchased. So that's 800 families looking for somewhere new to live. That also doesn't take into account the houses that will be rendered uninhabitable by noise and air pollution. So you're probably looking at another 2,000 there. Where are these people moving out to? Heathrow say they will pay market rate plus 25% for the compulsory purchase houses. But the reality is, when we look through the figures, they haven't got enough in the pot to do that. And that market rate plus 25% also doesn't take into account that houses in the Heathrow villages are lower priced than the ones in neighbouring Hayes and West Drayton, because they've been living with the blight that's been hanging over them from the threat of a third runway for years. So again, you're adding problems to the housing crisis. And then of course we come to the really big environmental issue, which is the air quality. Now in 2009 the idea of a third runway was scrapped because they couldn't meet air quality targets, legal standards. How are they going to meet them this time? What the airport are outlining to meet it are technologies that are either in their infancy or don't even exist yet, and they're basing it around everybody having an electric car by the year 2030. This is completely pie in the sky thinking. And the reality that we live with at the moment are our kids with awful breathing difficulties. I mean, one of the schools locally, the teachers actually have a wooden box on their table partitioned up, and the kids have to give their inhalers to the teacher because there are too many of them with breathing difficulties for the nurse to cope with. You are talking huge air quality issues. And when they say that the area is marginal in terms of air quality, well, that's taken over a 24-hour period. They're not looking at how far over the legal limit the area is during peak hours. And these are hours when people are travelling and our kids are travelling. And in some areas it can be as much as 8 times the legal limit for particulates. That's not good for our kids at all. And these are the future of our country, and they are having their lungs polluted. And it's not just the aircraft are only a small part of it. It's the vehicles getting into the airport that are stacking up on the M25, that are sitting there putting fumes out. And I'm sorry, when the airports say that they will get the traffic numbers down, how, when you're proposing to increase capacity by 33%, are you going to get those people to the airport? All this about, oh, well, they'll come on public transport. Well, if that's the case, why aren't they going on public transport now? It just doesn't stack up. Doesn't stack up at all. And of course, we will lose historical landmarks in the area. There will be extra buildings for the airport going out into places like West Drayton. The whole Harmersworth Detention Centre will have to be moved, so again, there's more building there. We'll probably lose greenbelt land. The whole thing doesn't stack up. So the solutions to it? Well, the solutions I see that should be put forward: 1, put in better infrastructure to the other airports in London to spread the load. 2, we have airports all around the country, most of them underused. For instance, Doncaster, Robin Hood. Let's look at how we can get these airports into basically used more efficiently. And of course, those airports up north, people are coming down here for transfer flights from Heathrow at the moment. Why, when we can do point to point? What do we need to do with these airports to enable the airlines to switch that traffic. And of course, if people are going direct point to point from the northern airports, then of course they're not clogging up the transport infrastructure coming down. It's a boost to the so-called northern powerhouse. We do not need a third runway at Heathrow. It is not about our economy. It is not about jobs. Let's get this right. That is what Heathrow are putting forward. It is purely about the profits and the pockets of the big business, foreign businesses that own the airport, and it's the people around the airport that will suffer, as well as yourselves across the rest of the country, because of course that money for the infrastructure isn't just coming from us, it's coming out of your pocket as well. So what can you do? Well, I would strongly suggest visiting the websites of some of the campaign groups. Stop Heathrow Expansion, Chatter, which is the Chiswick group, and the No Third Runway Coalition. Go on there, read up, learn about it, then write to your MP. Let them know in no uncertain terms that, in the words of David Cameron when he was elected in 2009, no ifs, no buts, no third runway. Thanks very much for watching.